Hello everyone, how are you doing? Big news, as you can see on my screen. This is on the competitive EDH subreddit at the moment. Announcement today. As of the 11th, Baral, Chief of Compliance, Demonic Tutor, Emrakul Lian's Tauren, Enlightened Tutor, Imperial Seal, Mystical Tutor, and Vampiric Tutor are all banned in 1v1 Commander. Furthermore, they are unbanning Arkan Dagson and Yisan the Wanderer Bard. Very, very exciting for the Yisan unban, but I'm chagrined to lose 5 tutors in one ban wave. Personally, I think that if they were worried about the tutors, we'll go into it in a little sec. I do have some gameplays in this video as well, and then I got a couple more in another video that I'm going to record immediately after this one. So they should be uploaded within an hour or so apart, at most. But so we'll get to them. But right now we're going to talk about this announcement. So if they had gotten rid of the unconditional tutors, Demonic Tutor, Vampiric, and Imperial Seal, I could have understood it a little bit. They're worried about black control decks being too consistent, I guess, is their concern. Baral and Emrakul are both problems. Now, with Mystical Tutor being banned, I think Baral and the Polymorph combo essentially being dismantled, I think they could have undone Ponder and Preordain. I think there's reason to let Brainstorm sit on the list, but Ponder and Preordain probably could have come off because the idea of banning Ponder and Preordain was an attempt to control Baral decks. With Baral just outright Baral/Polymorph decks. With Baral just outright banned, I don't think it's as big an issue as to control Polymorph decks, because you don't play Polymorph into Emrakul anymore. You have to use one of the worse Eldrazi. Still good, but fightable in the sense that it's not a protection from almost everything. Protection from instants, I think original has. So it's... If they polymorph into Promised End, at least you can fight Promised End. Sort of. You can't really fight Aeon's Torn and Annihilator 6, even if you survive the first hit in life total, you're probably dead because you lose 6 permanents. So with the polymorph deck sort of dismantled, I think Ponder and Preordain could have come off this list, especially when they are... we'll get back to the Ponder and Preordain. Alright, so bans. The tutors and Imperial Seal. If Inefficient Tutors were one of the big question marks on the initial ban list, over time decks have gotten more and more consistent and brutal in a way that we've clearly heard players are not enjoying. I think there's supposed to be a comment in that. More and more brutal. More and more consistent and brutal, semicolon, in a way we've clearly heard players are not enjoying. In a way that we've clearly heard players are not enjoying. Sentence is wrong. Our hope is that by lowering the consistency with which the interactive decks can find the perfect answer to the situation, and that combo decks can kill, the format will open up more and decks will play out differently from game to game. Alright, so let's look at that for a sec. They're intentionally lowering consistency of interactive decks. Isn't the point of Magic to interact with your opponent? Doesn't Morrow hate that Dredge is a thing for Vintage because it's an inherently uninteractive, unintuitive, non-Magic style strategy? Isn't that part of the game, is to interact with your opponent? And tutors enable consistency with which the interactive decks can find perfect answers to the situations. And this is where I sort of see their reasoning. Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, and Imperial Seal all are non-conditional tutors, with the exception of like top of deck for the latter two. You get any card you want. You need a land, you get a land. You need a Wrath, a creature, whatever you want to get, you can get it with them. So if you're playing a control deck, they're your 3 best tutors because they get you exactly what you need in the situation, and effectively you're running 4 copies of Toxic Deluge, or 4 copies of Torpor Orb, or 4 copies of Curse Totem, or 4 copies of The list goes on. You get the point. So banning those, with the idea of neutering control decks a little bit and neutering combo decks a little bit, I can get behind, because if they're trying to generate a more mid-range meta as well as very control heavy, they don't want it to be so control heavy, but they want control to be a thing. This sort of says to me that they don't want control decks to be as main in the format as I think that a healthy format needs a control deck. I believe that a healthy format should be about an even split between control combo and aggro style decks. Now all of those break down. You get like mid-range control, you get stacks aggro, like you get all of these different things, but you sort of fall into one of the three pillars of control, combo, or aggro style Magic. And all right, so we're going to slow down the consistency of the decks and make it more of a coin toss. That I don't mind as much, but combining that reasoning with how the format currently is where I sort of draw a line. So Mystical Tutor, and Enlightened Tutor, both are Enlightened. You have to be in white. I believe these are a way to combat Breya. Truthfully, I believe these are in response to Breya's rise, because all of them are played in the Breya list. And I think leaving the conditional tutors in would have been all right, because they're not as good in combo decks, because combo needs specific things to function, especially if you're tutoring for more than one piece. And they're all right in control, but not great in control, because you need to go down a strange tutor chain to try to get to different effects. So let's say you needed a sorcery, but you have Merchant Scroll in hand. You need to Merchant Scroll for Mystical Tutor, and then Mystical Tutor for the sorcery that you needed, if you need a Supreme Verdict, let's say. So there's some cool chains. Or let's say you need a land, you can Enlighten Tutor for the Expedition map, and then map for the land. But if you have Mystical Tutor, you can search for the Sylvan Scrying, and then use Sylvan Scrying to search for the land. So there's different tutor chains that you can do at the cost of time and card advantage, and mana advantage, if you want to play the conditional tutors. I can understand sort of the idea behind banning the unconditional tutors. And French 1v1 has taken this approach on tutors in the past, so it's not so surprising. I could see Imperial Seal remaining, but because it's not a budget concern on Moto either. That said, I don't think they should be concerning themselves with budget cards. So we'll agree to disagree that this is going to be a good change. I doubt that a lot of people will be thrilled with the loss of tutors, but I don't know. We'll have to see. My bigger concern is that we're hamstringing decks that are control decks that are, I'm sure, in part, to hamstring the partner-style control decks, most notably Tymna Crown, which is the other side of the Breya coin. Breya/Tymna plus Crown being all in the same color pie. They're all non-green. Breya is efficient, good. You've seen the deck on my own and Nate's channel. Crown and Tymna is potentially stronger. And they're putting the same way that they banned the Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm to try to combat Baral. They're trying to it feels to me that they're trying to put a band-aid on the existence of Tymna Crown by banning out the tutors of the control package instead of fixing the partner mechanic. And I think that's most notably because the only way to fix the partner mechanic is to adjust how the commander tax works for partners. Nate and I talked about this extensively at one point. It might have been on video, I don't remember. But if the partner mechanic or if the rules for Magic the Gathering Commander read, you must pay your commander's cost plus 2 for each previous time you have cast a commander from the command zone, partners would be fine. Because if you played Tymna for 3 mana, Crown, when you cast it, it would see how many times you've cast a commander from the command command zone, not how many times you've cast Crown from the command zone. And Crown would cost 7 the first time you cast him if you've cast Tymna once before. And that would be the way to balance partner mechanic rather than trying to put on this Band-Aid. I think the issue with that is I should think changing that rule is probably harder to sort of orient for... it's a bigger coding issue for Magic the Gathering. And we know they hate coding, as evidenced by the removal of the banned as commander list. It was too difficult for them to figure out the coding. Or they were too lazy to figure out the coding. So doing that would be harder to code than just banning this specific card. Furthermore, it would have to also go to the rules committee, I would imagine. Even though MTGO 1v1 and multiplayer paper don't operate under the same umbrella corporation, so to speak, or a rules corporation, they do influence each other. And it would be a much harder way to grow the format, I imagine, if MTGO has a different rules for casting your commander than Paper Magic. And I think that would be a harder way to introduce more people to MTGO 1v1 than multiplayer. So that's my bit on that. So I think Ponder and Preordain should have come back. Very, very truthfully. You want to totally neuter control decks by removing their ability to find answers to their situations, which is what Control does, for the record. Other control decks in other formats get to play 4 copies of Anticipate, 4 Serum Visions, and a couple Peaks. They get to play 4 Ponders or 4 Preordains and a Ponder and 3 Brainstorms or 4 Brainstorms. So they have in other formats they don't get tutors, but they get all of these cantrips. In EDH, there's 3, maybe 4 viably good cantrips. Gitaxian Probe, because it grants information, which is incredibly potent. Then Ponder, Preordain, and Brainstorm. You can make an argument for Serum Visions. It's just not as good, though. And maybe Sleight of Hand, same sort of situation. But if you want both the cards, you don't get them. You only get one. So the cantrip package that you get in EDH, you have to play with less cantrips than a 60-card deck has, just because you only get a single copy of each. And I think the tutors were the way to allow Control to be able to sort of play their card selection game, but with, instead of getting access to so many cantrips, they get the access to the tutors. I think they should have at least brought Ponder and Preordain back, especially with Baral and Emrakul going onto the list. All right, let's look at the unbans. I've talked enough about them. It's safe to say I'm glad to see Baral go, thank God. Especially with Brea deck neutered, which was the deck to beat Baral. And now I don't have to worry about that. Arkan Dagson. I don't think he's that fast, especially without the Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Mana Vault in the format. Might be good. We'll have to see. I think it'll be an interesting deck to see go off, but I don't know if it's going to be tier 1. We'll have to see. I'm really not sure at the moment with the Paradox Engine deck. Yisan the Wanderer Bard. You guys, if you've been fans of my channel for a little while, or if you're a new subscriber and you've gone back in some of my other videos back when Yisan was legal, I'm a big fan of Yisan, and I think this is going to be the format of mono green for a little bit. Yisan is nuts, and truthfully, banning out... Alright, tutors are banned, so suddenly I'm so much safer from something like Toxic Deluge and Wrath Effects. Control's going to be almost non-existent for a little while. Yisan lives in fear of specifically Wraths, and now it is significantly harder to find Wrath Effects. Yisan is going to run crazy, and when the format doesn't have fast mana, you would think Yisan's weaker because you can't do broken plays like turn 1 Trinisphere, then turn 2 Yisan and just laugh your way to the bank. But green has mana dorks. I get to play 6 or 7 1-drops that accelerate me to Yisan on turn 2, and my opponent has none. They have no ways to tutor into mass removal, and they have no ways to ramp ahead of me before I get Yisan down. if I go first, Yisan, my opponent will have 1 mana open, theoretically, when I play Yisan in most hands. And I think that's going to put Yisan far ahead. And it strikes me as ironic that they decide to ban the tutor package out of the format, and then in the same swing, unban 2 generals that tutor from deck into play. It's just a little bit ironic to me. I'm excited to get to jam Yisan some more. I've just tweaked the list on Moto, and we'll be jumping over to Moto now. Let's see. So I got a bunch of different stuff. We'll go over the collection before I jump into some games. I've been playing a lot of different decks recently. All right. Oh, Nin. Yeah, Nate and I were talking. I texted Nate, and we were talking about the bans, and he's understandably mad with the bans, as am I. But Nin might be the new control deck of choice. And Brian is going to be the person that's going to be the most on the forefront for it. He knows how Nin plays so well already that I think we're going to have to look towards him to be the flagship as control grandfather once again. So this is the Nin deck. I'm not going to go through every card. It's still very much a work in progress. I'm still tweaking it some. Yisan, 1v1. All right. So I cut out all of the cards that were banned. We're keeping the Trinisphere, the Thorn of Amethyst, the Winter Orb, because they're broken stuff. Added in the 0 drops. So let's see. The ways to, on turn 2, have access to Yisan. 1, because you have Dryad Arbor. Now this is assuming 1 card plus 2 lands in your hand. Or 3 lands in the case of Mox Diamond, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 if we're against blue. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There are 14 ways to make sure that I have Yisan on turn 2 with a little bit of finagling in the hands. Mox Diamond and Sakura Tribe Scout require 3 land hands. Jeweled Amulet, Chrome Mox requires you pitch something else, so you're down 1 more card, but you have Yisan. Green Sun, you just need to not have Dryad Arbor in opening hand. Furthermore, we now have Ancient Tomb in the deck that I didn't have, I believe, in the original. I didn't have Ancient Tomb in the collection at that point. So the deck just gets even more gross, I think. I'm not so sure about this Earthcraft. I put in and tested out a little bit as soon as Wednesday rolls around and the new format goes live. So this deck is looking suitably terrifying, and I can't wait to steamroll the lack of control decks in the format. And so you'll see I've cut the top end a little bit. I'm on the fence about keeping Terastodon because you don't get natural order anymore. But I think he's still worth including. It also gives us either Terastodon or Craterhoof as the 8, so we're not locked into a specific 8. We've added Court of Calling because it wasn't in the collection prior to Yisan's ban, along with all of this stuff. We've trimmed a little bit. It's basically that. And I think this deck is going to catch people by surprise and not be ready for it. And something we have to keep in mind, Cavern of Souls is still bugged on Moto. If you are trying to cast Yisan and you name Rogue, you cannot use the green Rogue mana to cast Yisan. You must name the first creature type. Stupid MTGO bugs. This has been bugged for maybe 6-7 months, and at least, and they've done nothing to fix it, which is insane that a card that's played in Modern and Legacy and Vintage, I believe, some of it, it's just the Eldrazi decks, I think, in Vintage, that play Cavern. But all of those formats have a card in that gets played in them, and the card is bugged. That is fundamentally wrong for Moto. Fix your client. All right, so we got the Nin deck, we got Yisan deck. We haven't touched the TNT Stacks deck yet. We're going to edit this later. Also, Worldly Tutor, another top of deck tutor, not banned. Just wanted to put that out there. They're letting us keep Worldly Tutor. Why? I don't know. Apparently, tutoring creatures isn't broken because they want us to play an aggro game. This isn't supposed to be in there. I was doing that for another deck I was playing against. All right. This is what I was working on. Sultai Sidisi, and we'll get to this and Maren. I've edited the 1v1 Maren deck as well, the non-combo version. This is the stacks version. This is the combo version. So edited the Sidisi deck some, brought the curve down, moved off 6 drops, Deranged Hermit, Opposition Lock. We got Wall of Roots, Earthcraft, very good with making zombies. And this deck will be legal as of the time, even after the 11th. And that was my goal, to start building some decks that will be legal after the loss of tutors. And this is definitely one of the better ones, I think. I've very much enjoyed playing Sidisi again. So let's jump into the same games. I think it's this one. This was a no-lander or a one-lander, I think. This is a loss. This was, I think, a bad series of mulls before I was editing it, when I was still rough on the deck. Oh, no, this was my discovery that Cavern of Souls is still bugged. And you'll see this hand totally hinges on Cavern of Souls, naming Shaman, because I can cast Sidisi, Deathrite Shaman, and Eternal Witness all off Cavern of Souls. And I'll be able to have 3 mana on turn 2 to Eldritch Evolution the Deathrite if I so choose. And you'll see my opponent goes Yavi Coast. I try to tap and I try to cast Deathrite Shaman. I mentioned it in chat, and we just decided to shuffle up again. I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry. I thought Cavern of Souls bug had been fixed. So I concede. I give him the game, and we shuffle up again. It doesn't really hurt my record at all. One loss is so inconsequential to my record that I'm not even worried about it. All right, so this is a nuts game. All right, Animar, Soul of Elements, pro white-black, pretty good. Sidisi, a little bit of a slow opening hand, but I do have a way to remove Animar that's not black, which is kind of what I was looking for in an opening hand. They have Tapland. I pick up Wasteland, and I decided not to deploy it yet because they didn't have a Dork. If they had played Dork, I probably would have wasted them on the hope to keep them off-colored mana. And when I see Reliquary Tower, that's sort of a signal that they don't have another colored source. So I'm definitely going to Wasteland. And just even to make it even better, I top deck a Dork that I can play right here. So I fetch Bayou here, and I fetch Bayou because I have a green and a blue source in my hand. I need to make sure that I get a black source, and Birds is a black source. So theoretically, if they Wasteland me, they would need to Wasteland and kill Birds to take me off black sources at this point. Because I really want to put this Chains down, because it actually is significantly good against Animar, because it prevents them from doing Glimpse of Nature combo turn. So I put down Finhorn, and we'll throw the Chains down. My opponent, to their credit, just Rex Sages the Chains. Alright, fine. No big deal. It burns the Rex Sage out of their hand. I pick up a great hand. I get to play Wall of Roots, and then use Wall of Roots immediately to put Sidisi down. What an explosive turn. And I had a land. I mill, Deathrite, and Dread Return. So I have Dread Return in my grave for later, if I want it. We'll pop Grave up, just in case. They cultivate and get Forest Island, play both of them. Alright, I top deck, Opposition. Brutal. And I've been sitting on this Deranged Hermit. I just need to deploy these, and the game should be locked up. So I attack with both. I'm hoping that he either chumps or just does nothing, but I'm hoping to get another zombie. And I sort of want to, like, the one zombie is not going to make a difference for this opposition, because I'm going to cut colored mana here. Slam Opposition, and I cut the blue mana, I believe. Yep. So, no, I guess I could, if I had an attack with a zombie, I would have been able to cut blue and red mana. And then there was no way that Animar comes down that turn. Truthfully, though, I kind of wanted my opponent to like rip a blue source and cast Animar, thinking they're in great shape, so I can slam Gilded Drake on them. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Explosive Vegetation, fine. I'm gonna have a Deranged Hermit. I don't care how much mana he puts into play that turn. I get Sidisi in. I make a little bit of a gamble, but it pays off. I mill a creature in Eternal Witness, and that is all I need to do to slam Deranged Hermit, and my opponent says, yeah, that's probably game. I tap him down on sources, and I only do 3 because I needed to see what I had targeted. And I'm going to tap him out of everything, I believe, except the Reliquary Tower was my plan. So GG opponent. That is the old Deranged Hermit Opposition game. On to the next. Alright, that was Sandman. I'm going to just try to breeze through the game as fast as I can. I'm just going to hit play and we'll talk. My opponent is on SRAM, and I'm on same thing, the Sidisi deck. So I have a little bit of a slower start. My opponent plays SRAM and Bonesaw. So I don't mind Bonesaw as much. I'm going to fetch for the Watery Grave. Save myself some life. I get Cabal Therapy. So I Cabal Therapy my opponent here, naming Umezawa's Jite, because I believe it's the most dangerous card in the matchup that I have to protect against. Yeah. Interesting. Unexpected error. Lovely. All right. So I name Umezawa's Jite. This is what my opponent has in hand. I then Phantasmal Image SRAM and Flashback Therapy to take this Mystic out of it, so that way he can't start putting all of this stuff into play. My opponent misses land drops a couple turns in a row. I slam Sidisi, equip Sidisi with Sword. The following turn, I play an equipped Sword. My opponent sacrifices SRAM that had been equipped with a Bonesaw to chump Sidisi, and I've gotten 2 zombies by this point, and the game is well and truly locked up. So my opponent scoops after that. Because they lose their SRAM, they're still on 2 mana. Their entire hand, they have to discard Godsend to hand sizes at one point. I think they were trying to build toward this Banishing Light, but it just never gets them there. And I was going to have Nissa on my 6th turn, land drop 6th turn, and then I was going to be 1 land away from having Nissa flip and start generating my own card advantage that SRAM will not be able to outpace. So, very quick game. That's mono white for you, though. Kipper. Is this when I switch decks? I was building quite a few decks at the same moment. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm playing Maren. My opponent is Gisha Sun's Avatar. Alright, Kipper. So I mill to 5, but I get a Birds of Paradise hand. And I get a Fenhorn Elf, which is pretty sweet. So I buy you into Bird. My opponent gets to their turn 2. They name a dinosaur, put a Steve into play. Come on, sack Steve. Do it now. Nope. Can't convince him to. Alright, so I'll play Mesmeric Fiend, and I take... Let me show the hand. Raging Swordtooth, which I need to make sure does not land until I get Maren in play. Raptor Hatchling, I don't care about it. A 1/1 that makes a 3/3 when it dies. A 2/2 Flying Menace that he can't cast yet. And a Vandal Blast. Cool, spending your Vandal Blast on my uncharged amulet. And I could have played the Elves here, but I decided that I wanted to make sure that he didn't have something terrifying at 4 mana that he would be able to deploy in his next turn, and I was correct. So I took the Rampant Growth because I want to stunt his development while my development is still stunted as well. Alright, my opponent cracks their Steve, gets a Mountain, and 3 mana deploys Mirror Entity. So now we still know his full hand. Mirror Entity in play. You got it. I get BB, which is pretty sweet here. And I deploy Fenhorn Elves. Still missing the land, though. BB plus Sadistic Hypnotist could be a long game. My opponent goes with a Raptor Hatchling. I don't mind that much. I'm going to crack their Steve to get my mana. And I go for the Swamp here because I have multiple green sources. 4 mana, I got to play Maren because I really don't want to lose to something like a top deck Ancient Tomb into Raging Swordtooth, kill 2 of my mana, give him back a Rampant Growth, give him a 3/3. Oh no, he would lose his Mirror Entity, but he would upgrade his 2 1/1s into a Trampling 3/3, and he would have a 5/5 Trample at the same time of killing almost all of my mana. The following turn, he'd be able to kill Jeweled Amulet. I need to play Maren before that happens, so I get her out now. He comes in. I decide to do nothing. I know I'm going to take 8 because I know nearly his entire hand. Raptor Hatchling has been used. So he does what I expect and turns his guys into 4/4s. I wasn't going to block with Maren anyway. I top deck Blooming Marsh when I have exactly the right amount of lands and get to slam a Thrag Tusk. How many games do you get to see where you get to play a fast land and then that untapped that turn and also cast Thrag Tusk? Pretty cool. Pretty cool with this deck. Get in with Maren because I will never block while he has a Mirror Entity and play with Maren. My opponent goes with a Sky Terror and crashes in. I decide to chump, and right here I'm offering to let him spend his mana and turn Raptor Hatchling into a 3/3 to trade for half of my Thrag Tusk. Instead, he decides not to, and I'm not quite sure why. Does he have a follow-up play? Oh no, so what I think he's doing is I think he's keeping 3 mana up so I can't send in with Meren. Not that I would, especially when he has the dinosaur anyway. So I don't maybe I don't know. I would have spent the 3 mana. Especially when I know I'm getting a 3/3 and I have a 2/2. Like, you trade half a creature for my commander. That seems like a good deal. So I can send in with Thragtusk. I pick up Diabolic Intent. Now, here's where this game gets fantastic. So I get to Diabolic Intent and get 1 experience, and I decide tap and untap. And what do you think I'm going to get out of the deck? Now, let me jump over to the lobby real quick. Collection, Meren. I'll give you 1 moment to pause the video, take a look, tell me what you think, or make a call. You don't have to tell me in the comments, but think what you would get in this situation. Well, I get a 3/3. That's first. Get some experience. Recurring Nightmare Thragtusk. That is a nightmare for an aggro-based opponent. I recur the Mesmeric Fiend, giving my opponent back the Rampant Growth, giving myself the 2nd experience when I activate Recurring Nightmare, bringing Thragtusk back, gaining 5 life, and it's giving me Mesmeric Fiend back on my end step to take the Ravaging Swordtooth out of my opponent's hand before it can kill my Mana Dorks. What a play, and my opponent scoops to it. God, Diabolic Intent, probably better than Demonic Tutor in this deck most of the time, just because it gives you a sacrifice outlet. Very cool, very cool. All right, account Kipper. I queued up another game, and he immediately decided to scoop the game. Vic Vega. I was watching a couple matches, decided to play, just join when I saw that he finished 1. I get absolutely stomped by a greedy keep, I believe. Yeah, so I have a greedy keep in that any gas gets me going, and my opponent has Mystics of the Is Magnus. Pretty cool Goblin commander, and she is an absolute nightmare if she gets going. So I need to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'm just going to jump through turns. My opponent correctly names Goblin instead of Wizard. I pick up more land, exactly what I don't want, and deploy Skull Clamp. My opponent deploys Dak, steals Clamp. I Manglehorn the Clamp, and I've drawn 3 lands so far. 4 lands. Faithless. They go through a series of Sleight of Hand, Metallurgic Summonings, discarding Deep Analysis off Flashback, Faithless Looting. My opponent's up to 2 experience. I miss a name on Cabal Therapy, I think. Yeah, alright. So Cabal Therapy seems to be bugged on Moto. I miss a name, and my opponent gets up to 7 experience and uses Red Sun on me once for like 9. And at that point, he's killed Meren 4 or 5 times by then. And I know there's no coming back. So I scoop. And I think it was more of a greedy keep. It was mistakes on my part, I think. My deck can compete very well with Mystics. It's just I didn't keep the right hand, and I got punished for it. Masmi the... Which is this? Masmi... to Fairy, I go down to a 5-card hand again, and this is the Nin deck, and this told me that I need to add more lands to it, and Brian probably is correct. I decided to push the Jeweled Amulet because it's not guaranteed mana. I'd rather get to a land. Of course, now I wish I had kept it and at least get towards Condescend so I can scry. And my opponent's just ramping out insanely fast ahead of me. And I believe at one point, he slams Sphinx, and I just scooped a Sphinx. There's no way I can come back from that. We do a rematch. So notice a lot of times when I'm brewing decks is when I pick up my losses. And it's usually due to really bad keeps. But, I mean, that's how you learn what hands are good in the deck and which hands aren't. And I think that's one of the most important things to know when you are familiarizing yourself with a new deck. What's the correct keep? I keep potentially another mana greedy hand, but I do have one of the better tools against Teferi in Legacy's Allure. I am on the draw, so we'll see. But I do have turn 1 Sapphire Medallion if I want it. I have red mana for Nin. I feel really good about this hand. And Nin is one of the decks that, it's unlike Meren, the mana flooded draws work well with Nin, as opposed to work against Nin. Like Meren, you want gas rather than mana. So I pick up Snip Snaps. I'm going to sit on the Spell Pierce just in case. I'm correct and rewarded for my play by countering a Mind Stone. I slammed Legacy's Allure, hope for no days. No days comes through, and now I'm just going to ride Legacy's Allure. And I believe I pick up Negate here as my draw. No, Bolt. All right. So I play Polluted Delta, so that way I have the option of Bolt on my opponent's turn. My opponent goes nothing, I believe. Yeah, nothing. Fine by me. I'm not going to crack Delta. I'm in a control mirror. The more lands that I can get, the better. So I play the Ancient Tomb now and turn it into a Sapphire Medallion, so it'll immediately produce mana. This also gives me Negate, Snapcaster, and Negate all in this turn, just from these two cards, if I need to. My opponent plays a 5th land and ships it back, and they can't slam Teferi because now my Legacy's Allure is at 3 at the same point that they would have been able to play it. It's also the reason to stop something like Mind Stone with the Spell Pierce. This doesn't need to be open anymore, is so that way my Legacy's Allure gets to 3 before Teferi does. Before Teferi can come down and start causing me problems. Alright, so I play the Jeweled Amulet just for gas. I'm going to charge it up. And right now I'm just sitting on Negate, Snap, Negate as options, or Negate, Snap, Spell Pierce. I get Steam Vents, and I decide now is the time for Nin. Did I Nin for 2? One of those? No, this is the first time I've played Nin. I only paid 2 mana for her. And this is sort of I'm playing Nin to try to force my opponent's hand. And I pump fake a couple times with mana, and I decide to let my opponent have Jace. I'm going to Bolt Jace in response to the draw, so that way he can't draw something like Dispel and stop my Bolt and keep his Jace around. Because the Walker will give my deck pause, an issue, but I do have, like if he wanted to fight over this Jace, I still have 3 counters and a 2/1. And if he wants to keep Jace around, I get to deploy Snapcaster Mage and flashback Spell Pierce and counter one of his spells. If he still stops me from being able to kill Jace, then at least I have a Snapcaster to attack the Jace. So I look at it that way. And then shoot with Nin. So very, very good lines of play that I have here. I get to untap, pick up Cryptic, and I decide I'm going to Nin on my turn. Even though I'd rather do it on my opponent's turn, I want to do it now. Just it means my opponent has less mana, and I can still keep up Negate, Snap, Negate with this Jeweled Amulet sitting at 1. I was hoping to get a land there, I believe. Yeah, that's why I do it on my turn, because I wanted to hit a land. I have a mana leak, though, which is absolutely fantastic. He tries to play one of his few answers to Legacy's Allure and Into the Royal, but he kicks it, and I can't understand why. I feel like kicking it's greedy. Like, leave up the mana and make me think that you have something. But you can see how good the Sapphire Medallion is. It just lets me leave up so much less mana that I don't have to worry about it. My opponent goes with an Everflowing Chalice, and I decide to let it go. I'm worried about a follow-up. Legacy's Lore is a trump card in this matchup because he'll never be able to pull it to Fairy while it's in play. And I want to make sure that my opponent can't find a window to deal with Legacy's Allure. And I don't have Negate plus a second counter magic. I have Negate Snap, but I can't snap back anything after that. So I only have one piece of counter magic. I want to make sure it protects the Legacy's Allure. So I decided to just let my opponent have the mana. I get a land, thankfully. I get to deploy Thought Vessel and then play Nin for 3 mana because it would cost 4. But Legacy Sapphire Medallion makes it 3 mana, not Legacy's Allure. This just ticks up the entire game. Alright, my opponent goes with 6 mana. And look how low my opponent is on cards now. This is exactly where I want to be. I've played this game so tightly that Nin's got me a couple cards. I've won a couple counter wars. I traded technically down. I traded 1 card for 0 because Jace got himself replaced on one situation, but Nin drew me a couple cards, and that's exactly where I want to be here. My opponent goes for a Magus of the Future. Cannot let that resolve with the amount of mana that my opponent has. I Cryptic the Magus, and I do a Cryptic draw. I pick up the Fire and Ice. I pick up a fetch land. I fetch out a mountain. This is just a precaution to make sure that I get my basics. It's also my only last red source. I guess there's thought to fetch out an island in case I draw a red fetch. I wanted to be able to get a land for me. I nin for 5 during my own turn and ship the turn back. I have Thought Vessel going now, so I'm not worried about hand size. My opponent taps, and then I guess they were trying to think about using Teferi, but their next play sort of illustrates what they were thinking. So they play land, do nothing, so they have 1 card in hand. And I think they were trying to like play around the fact maybe he doesn't have counter magic, maybe he does. Truthfully, if you're going to do something in response to, or hoping to get around my counter magic, do it in response to my nin activation. But nope, not the case. So I'm going to deploy the Scroll Rack just to increase my theoretical hand size. My opponent has Holomar Depths. All right, still 1 card in hand. So something that he's got mana for that costs X, because the way that he spent mana told me that it's a variable cost spell, or it has a kicker on it, and he tapped like 5 mana and then asked him how he wants to pay for the kicker and stuff like that. So I keep just Snapcaster in my hand. I pick up a grip full of counter magic, and I put Condescend on top. Pick up the Condescend, and play a land, and now I'm just going to let Nin do her job. Nin's going to draw me 10 cards this turn, I believe. Yeah, so here's how I tap. 2, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So I Nin for 10, and I go for 10 because at that point I still have a Rewind and Delay mana, or I have Condescend, Delay, and Counterspell. I have 3 counters backing this up, and my opponent only has 2 cards in their hand. So there's no way that this activation will not go off, short of something like Trick Bind or Wipe Away, with split second cards in blue. My opponent, to their credit, fires off their X spell. What do you think it is? Stroke Genius? Nah. It's a Blue Sun Zenith. Come on, opponent. There we go. Put it on the stack for 8. I'm going to delay that. So this is effectively a full counter spell because they'll cast Blue Sun Zenith from exile after it's suspended with X equals 0 because you don't pay the mana cost. And basically they just cast a spell that shovels back into their deck. So delay is a hard counter spell here. My opponent pays 3 mana and dissipates. Ooh, you got me, opponent. How about I Condescend, paying 1 mana and having X equal 1 because of my Sapphire Medallion. My opponent concedes to the Force Spike and the Nin for 10 activation in hand. The 10 cards I would have gotten plus the other 15 I would have been seeing off Scroll Rack would have found me Winter Orb and a fetch land, and I would have been able to clean the game up from there. The Winter Orb locking my opponent out of the game basically forever, and I believe I would have found Tezzeret relatively quickly, especially being able to redeploy Nin, Rewind to open up lands back from underneath Winter Orb. The game was well and truly going to be over. And truthfully, I would have rewinded my own spell at one point, potentially. I would have played Snapcaster and rewound the Snapcaster just to free up mana for me, if I could. Very cool game. Nin is suitably fun to play. Sif. What is this game? I actually don't remember which this is. Sif. Oh, Dragon Lord Ochtai. I keep a no-lander. I clicked the wrong button. And it's not the worst one. I get a draw and a Git Probe, and I miss. So, on the scale of one-landers or no-landers, this was an all-right one. But I don't get there. I suspend, but then I miss lands. And for some reason, when you Git Probe, it doesn't put the cards in the revealed section, which it should. They should have especially in 1v1, a revealed section should be visible, or it should put it in chat. and it says reveals to you these cards, even if like just that. I wouldn't have misplayed with this Needle. He had a Jace in his hand, I believe, when I probed him, and I forgot about it because I jumped through it too quickly. I thought it put it in the section, and it didn't. So I lose a no-lander. And Holmes is playing, truthfully, not the strongest of decks. He's got a Brionne Stout Arm mono white style, from what I understand. I do keep a 1-lander here on purpose, and I pick up a Volcanic Island, which is exactly what I need. And the reason I keep it is because I have the Memory Lapse, which is essentially a remand. It costs my opponent a draw step. I have Ice to cycle through. I have Pongify, and I have Trinket Mage. And I had the Signet. So if I get a second land, I get Signet down. If I get Signet down, I can get Trinket Mage down. If I get Trinket Mage down, I can get Chrome Mox down. And I know I'll develop my mana from where my hand was if I get any second land. So I felt comfortable keeping it. Pick up Forbid. My opponent plays Griffin Sentinel, Trinket Mage, and a Chrome Mox. I'm not going to deploy this Chrome Mox yet. It's safer in my hand against red-white. I deploy it. Goodbye Fire Ice. Play Nin out. Now I'm just going to shoot Trinket Mage for 2. Pick up more cards. I'm going to deploy Keranos this turn. My opponent has a Mark of Asylum, so Keranos can't blow down their creatures. I'm not terribly worried, though. I'm only being beaten by 1, and Keranos will start drawing the extra cards or hitting my opponent's face. They get a Sarah Angel down, so I'm going to Bribery them, and the best choice was Voice of All, and I just choose to go with Protection from White to fog their Sarah Angel continuously. And they put Spirit Link on Sarah Angel, and I'm just going to keep not letting them gain life by blocking the Voice of All. Was not the best deck to Bribery, but it's alright. I got a massive Nin activation off, and my opponent tries to Ethereal Haze, thinking that it will prevent Nin from drawing cards. But no, it only prevents the damage. So I shoot Nin for a bunch. They Ethereal Haze to prevent the damage to Nin, but then I still draw the 4 or 5 cards, whatever it was. I pick up Whir of Invention. That's all I need, because that's going to go get me Shackles, and Shackles is going to win me this game. Consorted Effort. I'm going to Shackles their Sarah Angel. I pick up Rolling Earthquake. I have the Cryptic Command to bounce Mark of Asylum if I need to. I make a mistake here and attack with Sarah Angel, thinking that it has lifelink. No, this is a triggered pseudo lifelink that my opponent gains the life because they still control Spirit Link. So a little bit of a misplay. They gain 4 and lose 2. So woe is me. Or they gain 4 and lose 4. So oh well. I decide to they cast Angel's Mercy, and this is when I know the game's over. I mean, I have a Forbid lock going that I haven't even had to use. I just, there's so many spells that I just don't care about. Boon Reflection. And I realize that they have a much more casual deck than my Nin deck, and they weren't really prepared for Nin. I copy Artifacted the Shackles. I shoot Sarah Angel here at the end of the turn for like 9 or something. Oh, 5. Still, it's a draw 5. I leave out blue for Dispel just in case they have something like a Path. But truthfully, my whole goal here is to try to just put like something like Snapcaster into play, so I can turn Keranos on, keep Keranos protected with Forbid, and just go beat face with Keranos. That's my entire plan here, is to just try to get Keranos down, because then I can draw as many cards as I want by turning Keranos on off Nin. And that's going to be the real game plan here. My opponent concedes, though. And once they get underneath a certain life total, I'll also be able to Rolling Earthquake them out of play, like out of the game, just by killing them with the direct damage from the burn. So my opponent scoops the game, I believe, in response to Nin. We talk about it a little bit. So I know this video was a longer one. I had a lot to say on the ban list, and I know I ranted a little bit. It's me. I mean, that's why you watch my channel, right? You listen to me rant, play Magic at an attempt at competitive, and try to make the correct decisions, but still try to be entertaining as badly as I am. All right. Hope to see you all in the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my content to anyone you think might enjoy it. What are your thoughts on the ban list updates? I really want to hear what you all think. Do you think that the Ponder Preordained Brainstorm should have come off? You think they should have only banned the black tutors because they're unconditional? Do you think it's a good change overall? Do you think Gisun should have stayed banned? What do you all think? I'm really interested to know, because it's going to be really interesting trying to find out where the control archetype is going to be moving now. And I was chatting with Nate, and Nin might be the place that it needs to go, like a Blue Moon style Nin deck, especially with more mid-range decks coming in. The dinosaur decks are going to start to show up, or attempts at them, and we'll have to see. I look forward to seeing all of your interaction in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Like I said, to anyone you think enjoys my content, it really helps me out. And if you want to support me on Patreon, feel free to click on the link on screen now. It's set to $1 or more pledge a month. It's a minimum of $1 a month. It's not per video. It's just help me support the channel a little bit so I can continue making great content that you guys get to enjoy. See you on the next one.